Okay, we're on to Quota Management System 3, QMS 3 video. This is the third video on how the quota management system works. The last one we finished up with this slide, which was talking about what the annual catch entitlement is, which is a weight that corresponds to the ITQ, which is your right in terms of a percentage of the catch to catch a particular species. And you can do whatever you like with that ITQ. You can sell it. You don't have to fish it. You can not fish. You can sell that individually transferable quota. You can lease it to somebody, so you can get somebody else who has a boat to go ahead and fish, and let's say they agree to pay you if you've got 5 ton of snapper, then they can go out, catch that 5 ton, and just pay you $5 a kilo or whatever you agree to be able to land that snapper against your quota. Okay, and this has allowed the situation where lots of people like dentists and lawyers who maybe have an investment fund to be able to buy quota, individually transferable quota, and they'll never set foot on a fishing boat. So, anyway, the quota is allocated. How the quota is allocated is, as we talked about before, to those who hold commercial fishing permits 18 September 1986. Those people would have had a catch history. They based it on 3 years of catch. So if we say, let's say that your historical catch, if we look at, let's just use the snapper fishery, for example, although you could say this about almost any fishery. If you in 1986 had a fishing permit and the total catch of the snapper fishery was 100 tons, then your catch averaged 5 tons per year for that time, then you would have been given 5 tons of ITQ, of individually transferable quota. And that would be your percentage of the catch that you have the right to catch for all time, essentially. Okay, so what that means is the next year, if the total catch stays at 100 tons, the total allowable catch is set at 100 tons. You can catch 5 tons. Now, this is the interesting part of the quota management system. It allows, or it gives the commercial fishers an incentive to take care of the fishery, to take care of this stock, to not overfish it, and this is the reason why. If you look at an expanding catch, if the stock is expanding, let's say the stock is bigger and the total allowable catch is now set at 125 tons. Right here was the old catch of 100 tons. The stock has gotten bigger, so fisheries managers have seen that the stock size is larger. They think, oh well, it can handle a little bit more fishing. They'll push it up, so here's your total allowable catch. It's now 125 tons. You still get 5%, but your share has expanded, as we can see here. Now you get to catch this much extra fish. So now you get you can catch 1.25 more tons of snapper and sell it, simply because you and all the other commercial fishers have looked after the stock, not overfished it, and it's grown. So your catch will expand as long as the stock is in good shape, if the stock is expanding. Okay, so what happens if the stock isn't expanding though? So now we've got the original 100 tons, but let's say people have overfished it. Maybe there's been some dumping going on. Maybe there's been some bad practice, unreported catches, and the stock could even be a disease or something that has gone through the population. The stock has shrunk, and so now the total catch is only 75 tons. Represented by this inner circle. your catch is still 5% of that your allowed catch from your ITQ, even though it's expressed as 5 tons. Your annual catch entitlement, your ACE, is actually only going to be 3.75 tons. You still get 5% of that 75 tons, but because the fishery hasn't been looked after very well, the stock hasn't been looked after, your catch is going to decline. And so you can see that by having a individual transferable quota, a quota right to catch that percentage in perpetuity, so nobody can ever the government can't just change the rules and take that away from you without compensating you, then your catch your catch will remain at that same percentage, and it's in your best interests. You have the interest, well, like I say, it's in your best interests to make sure that your stock is in good shape, so your allowable catch doesn't fall off, because you're going to make a lot less money here than you will here. Okay. So there were a certain number of species put into the quota management system in 1986, but since then new species have been added to the quota management system. Things like yellowfin tuna, bluefin tuna, broadbill, lots of other species have been added to the quota management system. Octopus, whelks, even things like Venus shells and geoducks, that kind of thing, or gooey ducks, however you want to say it. Those things have been added into the quota management system. And so let's say that you have come up with a way of dredging for Dicinia. So, and you're going to sell them as surf clams. And you go out and you dredge around Papamoa Beach, and you get, say, 5 ton a year of Dicinia, and you're selling those. You're moving that along quite nicely. So they come out and they say, okay, well, we're going to put this species into the quota management system. They're going to come up with a total allowable catch based on your history, your history. You will get whatever percentage of that total allowable catch you've been catching for the year, minus 20%, because 20% of the total allowable commercial catch of any new species going into the quota management system is allocated to the Treaty of Waitangi Fisheries Commission. And this, of course, has to do with the fisheries settlement, which we, depending on when you're watching this video, may have talked about or will be talking about in the future. So you may even have to purchase a certain percentage from Maori in order to catch the same amount that you have been. Okay. Alright, so in order to stop people from monopolizing any one particular fishery, in 1986 these laws were written in, or these regulations were written into the quota management system, and no fishing operation could dominate. So any any one person or company can hold only 10% of the rock lobster total allowable commercial catch for a fisheries area, for a fisheries management area. 20% of any inshore total allowable commercial catch, so we're talking about things like gurnard or snapper, and 35% of any deep water species throughout the exclusive economic zone, and that would be things like Oreo dory, maybe even ghost sharks or orange roughy. Okay, so if you go over if you buy too much quota, or if you overfish more than the quota that you have, you may be subject to forfeiture of the quota that you own. It'll be taken off of you by the government and held or given to or sold off to another buyer. Okay, so the restrictions were that the control of the resource remain within New Zealand. And so in order to try to keep the control of the resource within New Zealand and not with interests outside of New Zealand, corporations outside of New Zealand, only New Zealand residents or companies can hold quota. That was written into the laws. Unfortunately, when the swordfish, broadbill, was brought in, there was a lot of it bought by Australian interests, and there have also been a lot of joint companies set up with New Zealand companies with 50% ownership of the company, or 51%, say, by a company like Tallies, and 49% owned by another company. And this is on paper. When you look at how those companies are actually organized in terms of finances, it gets a little more shaky in terms of 49 versus 51%. Now, there was a Tallies case in which a company called Seabay Holdings had 8,500 tons of hoki quota, and or Seabay Holdings owned a certain percentage of, or they were in a joint company with Tallies, and the company split up. 8,500 tons of hoki was granted in the split to Seabay Holdings, which is a company that was, I believe it was Chinese. It could be wrong. It could have been Korean or Japanese. And Tallies sued because they said that under the law, only New Zealand residents or companies can hold quota. And then a justice said that that wasn't true, and he overturned, he allowed that split, and since that time, it has opened the door. Essentially, there is no legal impediment to foreign companies owning New Zealand quota holdings. Okay, for administrative convenience, you can only, if you're going to buy quota, you have to, if let's say you're going to want to buy some snapper, then the minimum you can buy is 5 tons, okay, for finfish, and you need to own 3 tons for rock lobster and shellfish. You can't go out and buy 15 kilos of crayfish so that you can land it if you want to, anytime you want to go out and catch 100 crays or 20 crays or 30 crays or whatever when you're recreational fishing. You can't go out and own 20 kilos of crayfish. It's just too much trouble to administer that. And so if you think about it, if you're a new person wanting to get into the crayfish fishery, let's say you want to buy a boat and become a crayfisher. If you want to, that means if you want to fish your own quota, you need to buy 3 tons. If crayfish quota is selling for $250,000 a ton, you may have to spend $750,000 just to buy the quota before you even buy a boat to get into the fishery. So some of these very lucrative fisheries are nearly impossible for young people to break into if they want to become a commercial fisher. Okay, so in order to not penalize people for accidentally catching more than they're meant to, which does happen. I do remember being on a trawler one time fishing for squid, and up came the trawl bag, and it had 25,000 kilos, 25 ton of spiny dogfish in it. It must have gone through some sort of breeding aggregation or something, but anyway, there were massive amounts of spiny dogfish in it. That was not an intended catch, but yet it was caught anyway. So if you had, whether they had quota for it or not, I don't know, but they would have had to find it if they didn't. So this system is allowed, or is built in with flexibility to trade the quota with other quota holders if you need more. So if you catch more than what you what you have quota for. You can buy quota from somebody else, then you own that quota. You can land the catches against another person's quota, or you can pay what's called a deemed value. The deemed value is set each year, and it is designed, let's say if it's snapper, let's say the deemed value might be $4.30. Okay, so what they try to figure out is how much is it going to cost in terms of fuel, wages for crew, upkeep on the vessel, for a person to go out and catch snapper. So if they determine that on average $4.30 of the landed the price that's paid for the snapper goes just to pay for expenses, fuel, and like we said, fuel, food for the crew expenses, and upkeep, then and buying new gear, then that's what they will set the deemed value at. The Ministry for Primary Industries, they'll say, okay, if you catch extra snapper, then you can land it. So this discourages people from just dumping it overboard and not declaring that they've caught it. You bring it in, and at least it will be counted against what is caught that year, so we can keep better stock assessment records. And it's not going to go to waste, and you won't be penalized. You just have to pay essentially what it cost you to catch it. So it takes any profit out of the landing the fish. Actually, what I should have said is that they look at the expenses that it takes, subtract what they believe that the fisher will subtract that term from what they believe the fisher will be able to sell this fish for, and the difference is the deemed value. So there's no profit in selling those fish. There's no incentive to go and catch more because the value, there's no value to you. You don't make any money for your hard work. Now that has caused issues when people have gotten the deemed value wrong, and there was a case in the West Coast a few years ago where people were making actually, even if they landed extra snapper, paid the deemed value, they were still making a couple of bucks a kilo, and it was still worth their time to go and overfish. Okay, but the deemed value, when it's set right, should disincentivize overfishing, and it should disincentivize dumping. Okay, so commercial fishers are required to provide detailed catch reports. These catch effort landing returns, which was number on your quota management flowchart, your QMS flowchart, your catch effort landing return is number 18, and number 16 is your license. We'll get to that in a second. So 18 is your catch effort landing return and your quota management reports. So those two bits of paperwork essentially say what you've caught on each of your fish, and then a monthly or a three monthly tabulation of everything that you've caught. And the catch effort landing return is filed at the end of each fishing trip. Okay. Then you are only allowed to sell to somebody with a license to buy the fish, and that was number 16, a licensed fish receiver, LFR. It's number 16. And the licensed fish receiver also has to provide a monthly report with purchase invoices saying what he's bought. So the essentially the commercial fisher tells what he's caught, the buyers say what they've bought, and the licensed fish receiver provides the monthly report, and that is number 17. You can put in monthly report, and the Ministry of Primary Industries adds up what the commercial fisher says he's caught versus what he what the buyers say they've bought from him, and if they don't add up, then eyebrows start to get raised. People start to do some auditing, and that is when overfishing can be found out. Okay, so if you go to the top, number 2, you can see the arrow from 18 and 17. They go up to number 2, which is the Ministry for Primary Industries. Okay, and so that's where the paperwork gets assessed. And number 1 is NEWA, and NEWA and the Ministry of Primary Industries both contribute to stock assessment. So number 3 is stock assessment. 3 in your box on your quota management system flowchart is stock assessment. Okay, so when the stock assessment is done, the biomass maximum sustainable yield in number 4 is set, is estimated for that year based on the catch effort landing returns, and those tell you catch per unit effort, which we've talked about, and from the biomass of the maximum sustainable yield, then the maximum sustainable yield as well is estimated. So 4 is biomass maximum sustainable yield, and 5 is maximum sustainable yield. Hopefully at this point you can see with your with this flowchart how the circular nature of reporting and catching that allows for continuous stock assessment and hopefully a sustainable commercial fishery. Okay, so there we go. This is what the next slide talks about. It just talks about the assessment process with the Ministry of Primary Industries and NEWA. Okay. So if there's a species that's not an individually transferable quota species, and you got like catfish there, so you'll find that there are lots of catfish in Lake Taupo and through Waikato, through the Waikato region, the river system. Then these are able to be caught as bycatch, but they are not supposed to be targeted. But you can, as bycatch, you can catch as many as you want. You can sell them. They're non-ITQ species, and you can sell as much as you want. Okay, and then eventually a quota management system or a quota management plan has to be derived in order to incorporate those species into the quota management system. There's very little actually that's left that hasn't been put into the quota management system. Whether they have a total allowable catch defined or not, that they're still generally listed under the quota management system. And just to give it a little bit of teeth, the penalties against commercial fishing regulation are listed here, and so you can get fined a fair amount of money or forfeit your quota to the Crown, depending on what you do to subvert the system. So this hopefully is the quota management system hopefully is a way to avoid the tragedy of the commons. It's privatized fishing rights, and there are issues around something that is owned. The stock themselves are owned by all New Zealanders, but then the rights to access that stock are limited in terms of commercial fishing. But hopefully that privatization gives people an incentive to look after the fishery. And New Zealand is considered to be a model that works for the most part as a fisheries management regime compared to most other parts of the world. And with the quota management system has been put into place in other parts of the world, which we'll talk about later. It seems to work, but of course does have some problems and issues with it, as we've seen from, and we will be talking about in terms of the foreign chartered vessels and other corporatization of the fisheries, other problems with corporatization of the fisheries. So that is the end of the quota management system. Thank you.